All right. Good evening. So I did a video where I was going to, or no, let me phrase that. I actually did for amusement and experimental purposes file a discrimination complaint against race, and this was for a construction type company. I'm not saying any names or any of that crap, but this was just a social experiment. Hopefully this actually works. So let's see what this does. All right. So this was an executive order signed by Trump, getting rid of DEI. Now, mind you, you know, I'm a white dude, in case you couldn't tell. So this is the actual thingamajig that Trump put into place. I'm not going to read it. You can read it. It's showing. Good. That's what I wanted to do. Didn't show last time when I was doing the job hunt. So let's get into it. Long-standing protective individual Americans. Yep. Da 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 da. For all Americans. Okay, so it almost kind of contradicts this order, anyways. But let's follow along. 60 years after the civil rights of 1964. Now, according to President Trump, this is what affirmative action, DEI, some of the issues it has created. They're basically using immoral, according to Trump, immoral race and sex-based preferences under the guise of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. I know some people like to say, didn't earn it. That can violate the civil rights laws of this nation. So, yeah, that was that. For me, it was just a social experiment. I'm not going to put any company out on blast. I know, labor jobs, they tend to have a hard time getting, whiteys to do them. So that's that. That's my main background, was manual labor before I got my government contract position job. So basically, according to Trump, it's almost like they were basically choosing people based on, and there may be some truth of that. Let me know what you actually think, either in the chat or in the comments after I stop the stream. Illegal DEI. So he basically wants to bring back merit-based. Now, mind you, the initial ad, for the job that I applied for, I met all those criteria. Now, keep in mind, they may have chosen somebody else who may have met that criteria a little more, which ties into the whole, merit. But I do think it's comical that, even though I had, the email where they reached out to me first on my Spanish Portuguese name, I'm pretty sure the discrimination department, reported discrimination, they probably looked at me like I was some sort of troll, and I kind of was. But again, this is just a social experiment that, I'm an American dude looking for work. I apply for a labor job. So technically, if this was before the Trump administration, maybe they would have done something, or again, maybe they would have still looked at me like some sort of friggin' troll, All right. So you can read it. I'm not going to read it for you. Don't be stigmatized, demeanor, shut out because of their race or sex. So there's the illegal part. They violate the text and they undermine the traditional values of hard work and merit. I totally have hard work and merit, but again, the logistics of this is basically saying that we have to choose people of this and that just to create a diverse workplace, even though they might not be able to do the job. So that's this side of the thing. And let's see what. Again, I'm not going to read it word for word because I'm sure I'll post a link in the description as well if you want to read it after. All right. In case I witnessed firsthand the disastrous consequences of illegal, pernicious discrimination. That again has prioritized how people were born instead of what they were capable of doing. Now, obviously, in all fairness to either or, there's going to be certain jobs that some people just can't do. You'll never see a blind sniper, a quadriplegic lifeguard, et cetera, et cetera. But and that's why in the interview they say, "Can you do the job with or without reasonable accommodation?" Enforcement of civil rights laws. So again, I'm not reading this word for word. You can check it out after I'm done. And again, this is just more of a social experiment. I never saw myself as being a litigious prick, but shoot, with the way things are going, you might just become one. Anyhow, moving forward, stick to the topic. Ending illegal preferences and discrimination. Yeah, I know. Yes, that white privilege. Turn all discriminatory and illegal preferences, mandates, policies. So this might raise the issue, and again, I'm probably going to mention a scenario that we know will probably never, ever happen. A white dude, a black dude, with the same exact credentials, and they go and hire the white dude. I'm not saying that that's never happened. I'm just saying that the probability of that is probably very, very, very slim to none. Revoked. Okay. So it's basically revoking all these previous executive orders. Promoting diversity. October 5th, 2016. Yeah, that was prior to his first term. Okay, yeah, equal employment opportunity. For taking affirmative action. So let me know what your thoughts are on this. So let me just go back up here. The regulatory scheme in effect on January 2025. I mean, it's past the 90 days, obviously, but so these are all of the stuff that's being revoked. Again, what I was doing was just a social experiment, just to see what would happen. You know, if they never reached out to my, Spanish Portuguese email, I would have never even bothered applying. You know what I'm saying? Um, Now, what would have happened if they said, "Yeah, you have a case. We're going to get you an attorney." Da, da, da. What would have happened? Would they have, obviously, when they lawsuits of any kind, they obviously want to try to settle by giving you hush money. This is true no matter what the case is. Um, Workman's comp, um, sexual assault, assault by policemen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Defective product, toxic workplace, et cetera, et cetera. They want to settle, because they don't want their, company doesn't want their name, really blacklisted, even though technically, if there's a lawsuit filed, your company's blacklisted anyways, even if you settle. And that could go one of two ways. That's probably somebody who's, some disgruntled employee who's just money hungry, or the company, in fact, could be doing really bad shit. We just don't know what happens when they settle. Anyhow, back to the topic on hand here. So again, I'm not going to read this word for word. So we're basically, and this is what I've been saying all along, look at the credentials, that an applicant has, and don't hire based off of what people fucking look like. And, I just fucking hope they actually, if they really mean merit-based, that they actually fucking mean merit-based. Like, if I apply for a job and, I have the credentials to meet that job, then they should not hire somebody who's 24 years old just because, they're younger. Because that in of itself would be, preferential, treatment, ageism in a way, when I have the credentials. But, they want to hire. It's like that one meme I saw, many years ago, the sexy girl, I'm here for the interview, and the creepy recruiter, you're hired, like that one meme. So, yep, the White House, January 21st, 2025. Yep, so that's pretty much that. And that's all she wrote. I'll talk to you.